So tell me about your dad's farm. What did he milk cows or what?
Yes, we always had about 7 or 8 cows to milk. And I think it was in high school when I was dating, I could milk them all, get ready for my date. I would milk them because the rest would be back haying or something. That's, I guess, when my mother died that I did that. And Eugene, he'd take care of Julie while I was doing this. And then I had to get supper around for the family before I could go out on my date. But it worked out. I got it done.
Could you tell me about your mom? Tell me about what you know about her life. What?
Well, she was married when she was 16. Of course, she had Marie, and then she had Buddy. And Dad went to Flint to work, and they had an apartment there. And anyway, when they were there, a Buddy got pneumonia, and I guess they didn't get to the doctor in time, or I don't know what happened, but anyway, he died, and so Mother wasn't going to stay in Flint anymore. She wanted to be home, so they came back, and there was this neighbor's farm they wanted Dad to farm that, so he had a new car at the time, and a team of horses, and it was hay season, and I guess he got too much hay in the barn, and it was combusted, and the horses were in the barn, and he got them loose and tried to chase them out, but they were too frightened. They would go right back into the fire. He led one out and went back for the other, and it ran back into the fire. And his car was in the barn, and he lost his car. That was just before I was born, and I was born on Isabella, Mecosta County Line Road, September the 1st, 1930. I was born at home. Dr. Rondo delivered me. I can remember one winter we had snowdrifts. It seemed like they were giant to me because I was a little girl. They were way 3 times taller than I was, and we didn't have school for quite a long time. I know they didn't get around to plow our road for about a month, And my sister Marie, she was really upset about that. She was going to have a party. My brother Roland, he was always going off someplace and sleeping. Well, we looked all over for him. We used to have this shortcut to school in the woods and that. We traveled all that to make sure that he didn't get lost in there. And we come home, and guess where we found him? Asleep in the car. He'd crawled in the car and gone to sleep. I went to Titus, and
How far away was that?
a mile and a half. I walked a mile and a half till I was in the 6th grade, and I decided, well, I would change schools so I wouldn't have to walk only to the corner, which was a half a mile, and that was a big thing then. We went to Waveman then.
And when did you start going to Barryton?
In 11th grade,
How'd you happen to start going to Barryton?
because the school bus would pick me up right in front of my house, and that was a plus to me. Just have to walk outside and get on the bus. We used to have a garden, and my mother would can, and she had rows and rows of stuff in the basement on shelves, and I'd go down there and I'd look and I think those were so beautiful. Well, once I can remember them putting up half a cow or something, I don't know. Probably was early spring when it started to thaw, and you had to can it because we didn't have refrigeration. And she'd have a big canner full of beef.
Would you cook it before you put it in?
No, you just packed it in the cans, and I guess she put salt, and I know it was very good when we ate it. When we had parties, we had a big freezer, and we'd make ice cream. Mother would fix it, and we'd set it in a big tub. Generally, there was some older boys around, and they'd run the crank a lot, and of course, everybody wanted to take their turn to do this, so they'd freeze up a bunch of ice cream on Saturday nights, and that was our entertainment. My mother said, "Don't you ever go on a lake ice skating." Well, guess what? I did, but nothing happened. But she was always afraid. Even when we went swimming, she was always hollering, "You're too far out, Lila, you're too far out. Come in, come in." Of course, I was always stretching it to the very end. But I wasn't as adventurous as Marie. She skipped school once. And I brought the note home. The superintendent gave me this note, and he says, "Take it home and don't open it up. Just give it right to your parents." Of course, I did that. That was another reason why she should hate me.
So tell me about how you met Dad.
Well, I went to the store with Dad. When I got there, well, there was a couple of kids that I knew, one girl, and of course, she came right over and said, "Do you want to go out tonight?" Well, sure, I would like to do that. But I have to ask my dad. He probably won't let me go. Well, on the way home, I said, you can come after me, and maybe I'll get to go and maybe I won't. But I was on the way home, and I asked Dad if I could go, and he says, no. He says, and the neighbor spoke up, and he says, well, you should let her go. That's the printer's son. So I got to go. And then we went to, about my first date, we went to Saginaw, because the one boy's mother worked there, and we visited her. And then the girl, she said, well, I want to go see my dad. Her dad and mom were divorced, so we went to Flint. And back then, the roads weren't quite like they are now, so it took longer to travel. And besides, she wanted to go to the drive-in theater. Well, I was the only one that was underage in that car, so they could have gotten in a lot of trouble. They might have, nowadays anyway. Anyway, on the way home, it was getting light outside, and the sun was trying to come up, and they come to my corner, 66, and they said, should we go out for breakfast? Well, sure. So we had to go way to Everett to breakfast. And then they wanted to take me home, and I said, oh, I can't go home, as I would get beat up. And so I stayed up. I wanted to make up an excuse, and my girlfriend, she says, well, you stay all night with me and we'll pretend that we thought, we told Dad that you were going to stay all night with me. Well, he knew better than that, and I was sure that I was going to get beat up, but I guess Dad knew, well, he knew the one boy very well that I was with, and so he trusted him, so he just says, don't ever do that again. So that was it. Not too long after that date, I had nose surgery. I had one at 8 years old, and I was in Ann Arbor. And back then, they weren't too well informed on things.
So what was the problem with your nose?
I had growths in my nose, and then I had the one surgery at 8 and the other one at 16. And I didn't really know Jim that well. I had only gone with him three times. Well, anyway, he got a hold of me somehow, and he wanted to come and see me, and so well, he did come and see me, and I wanted to go home with him, and so we had to call my mother and get approval, or my folks, and get approval. Of course, it was my mother that gave the approval that I could come home with Jim. And so his parents were in Detroit at a play, and with his sister and her friend, and the four of them. And by the time we got there, they were waiting for Jim to pick them up. And here he comes with this girl in the car, woman in the car, or whatever, and they thought he had picked up somebody in Detroit. And then when his parents got in the car, or started to get in the car, well, Janet says, well, hi, Lila. And so they realized that I was from the area, and so, but Jim's mother talked to me all the way, asked me so many questions all the way home. I have a letter that my mother sent me from there.
So tell me about dating Dad. Where would you go on dates and stuff?
Well, we went to Remus to the theater. Quite often they had a theater in Remus at that time. And then sometimes he took me to Clare. And then to Mount Pleasant. And then sometimes to Big Rapids. That was the most he liked to do because he didn't want to go dancing ever. I know he said after he retired he would learn to dance. When he retired, I held him to that. We were going to Florida, and we were in this campground, and there was Arthur Murray dance studio there, and so he went along with it, and we signed up, and we could do, he loved to do the waltz, and there was a church on the back road, and we'd take the motor home, and he'd turn on the music, and we'd practice the waltz. But there was nobody around. It was during the week, so it was a good place to practice. I was taking care of my family after my mother died, and my dad was going to get married, and my new stepmom said, this house is not big enough for two women. Actually, it wasn't big enough for her 3 kids, and Dad still had Rollin and Harold and Jean and Julie there too. And Dad, he was holding off, and I said, well, I'm going to Phoenix. My aunt wanted me to go to Phoenix with her. She was going to Phoenix at that time. Her husband had a lung disease. So I told your dad that I was going to Arizona, and he was going to let me do that, I guess, one night, and then the next day, the neighbor boy, he wanted to marry me. Well, the next day, here comes Jim, and he was on a Saturday, and he says, do you want to go to Crown Point, Indiana, get married? And I said, sure. So we went to Crown Point, and of course we couldn't get married. We had to go back to Gary, Indiana, and get our license. We got our license at Crown Point, but we had to go to Gary, Indiana, and get our blood tested. And we went back there, and then the next day we didn't get married till Monday morning. And then we went to Chicago for a honeymoon, and we come home. Jim's parents didn't know, but I guess they guessed, I don't know. But we came home and said we were married, and so Jim's dad says he gave us $100 to go on another honeymoon. So we went up to Copper Harbor, and that was that story.
Yeah, so did you have a reception?
Well, Marie, she was really upset because I didn't have a wedding, so she gave me a reception, and in the Remus Town Hall. It was Fire Hall, I guess, now. Well, we didn't really decide to have a baby all at once. I got pregnant and so this was in Everett when he was working in Everett. And we went, we didn't know if we could handle a baby or not. And so 9 months later we had a baby. And of course, then everything, oh my goodness, it was wonderful. And I know your dad says, when I first seen him after you were born, he says, you didn't think you could do it, or I could do it, did you? I was so mad at him, I was the one that did it. Of course, I had a little bit of ether or whatever they give you, and so I was not too happy with him for saying that.
So what was the deal with my childbirth? It took a long time, or what? Was I a breech, or whatever they call it, or?
You were a breech baby.
What does that mean?
You were upside down.
So feet first?
Feet first. I know I had all the pains, but you didn't come. And they started in the evening before, and I didn't have you till the next day about 10 o'clock, but I got really frightened. This girl came in, and she was hollering and screaming, and they took her down the hall because they knew they were frightening me. And then my pain stopped because I wasn't going to have you. I was going to, I don't know. It was going to be too much for me after hearing all that. And I sent your dad out to the car, and he went to sleep for a while. And then the next morning, things started coming again. I guess the doctor got there then, and he decided he'd get things going, so he induced the labor or did whatever and got things going.
So how'd you decide on that name?
Well, James was Jim's grandpa's name, and Leonard was his uncle Leonard, which he liked very much. It was his mother's sister's husband. We lived in a little apartment when you were born, but then after you were born, we decided we needed a bigger place, so we rented this house. And then shortly after that, this house came up for bids, and we bid on this house, and we got the bid, and but it was no property, so we had to go to this farmer and get the property, buy the property, and then there was no phone line, and we decided we needed a phone, so we had to run the wire to this about half a mile from us. And then after we would do that, well, then they would come out and redo it and put a phone in for us. But I didn't want to live out in the country without a phone with a baby, so that was, I guess I become modern when I was in Everett.
So tell me about raising Joe as a baby.
Oh, it was fun. I remember taking him down to this lake that we lived on, and I didn't have to worry about him going in the water. He didn't like the water. He'd sit on the beach and play in the sand, and I'd go out and swim. and he'd sit there till I was ready to come home. But I could not ever coax him to get in the water. No, he wasn't going to do that. And he was quite leery of the water till he decided he liked the girls, so then it wasn't hard to get him to take a bath. He was probably taking a bath a couple times a day.